Hello, college basketball fans. Thanks for tuning in. This video, we're going to highlight the Midwest region, and I'm going to go round by round and try to give my best insight on who I think can win in some of these certain matchups. Just real quick, at a glance, looking at the bracket, Houston obviously is heavily favored in this bracket. I think this bracket, just like the South, is a little bit more easier to predict because there's not a lot of, oh, hey, if Villanova was in this Midwest bracket, or if you had like a team like Oregon or UNC. And then at a close second, because they are the Big 12 champs, I would say Texas, maybe Xavier, but you'll see why. So let's go round by round. The Cougars against Norse. Come on. So Cougars, Iowa versus Auburn. I picked Auburn, but now I regret it. Miami against Drake. I mean, Miami was the #1 seed in the ACC tournament, so I'll say they beat Drake. Indiana against Kent State. Indiana was one of those fun teams to watch. I remember watching them when they beat Purdue in Purdue. Iowa State against Pitt. Yes, I have Pitt beating Mississippi State in that first four. And so then I'll have Pitt versus Iowa State. Iowa State was trending in the right direction a lot in February before, the Big 12 tournament started. And they were one of those top teams that everybody was like, hey, watch out for this team. Me personally, I think they peaked a little bit too early. And so I don't have them particularly going too far in the bracket, but I do have them beating Pitt. I'll have Xavier moving on. Texas A&M against Penn State. Texas A&M beat Alabama. And so there's that, hey, Texas A&M can roll. They can go on a little bit of a run in this tournament. But personally, I just think because I slept on them so much in the Big Ten tournament, I remember looking at Northwestern versus Penn State in that potential matchup. And I watched a little bit of highlights and I was like, Penn State, yeah, they beat Northwestern, but it was the regular season. I don't know. And so I slept on them. And I was like, no, it's not going to happen. This time Northwestern's going to win out. They're going to win the Big Ten championship against Purdue. I was an ultimate clown for picking that. And so I'm not going to sleep on Penn State. I think Penn State can beat the Aggies. They went on a phenomenal run in that Big Ten tournament. And so I think they're going to take this momentum into the playoff and they'll get a couple wins. Texas against Colgate. Texas with their interim head coach, which I agree with everybody else. I think he should be upgraded to the full-time head coach or, put himself on the market and just be like, hey, show me the money. I don't think Big 12 champ is going to lose to Colgate in the first round, so I have Texas moving on. For Houston versus Auburn, I put a star on this one too because I think a lot of the 1 versus 8s or 1 versus 9 matchups this year are going to be really close. And is one of them going to fall off like a couple years back? Miami versus Indiana, just because of kind of the disappointment of how Miami showed up in the ACC tournament. I think Indiana, who also underperformed in the Big Ten tournament too, it's kind of a who has the guys this year just because it's Indiana. I am going to try to give that safe pick and pick Indiana, even though I might be wrong and I might be sleeping on the Hurricanes way too much. Iowa State against Xavier. Xavier is the Big East runners-up. I think Big East played the best basketball in college this year. They lost a tough loss to Marquette, and so I think this team will come hungry into the tournament and they'll be able to get into the Sweet 16. Penn State against Texas. I'm going to pick Penn State, and now that I pick them, I feel a little like, oh, this is going to come around and kick me in the butt. Texas, along with Arizona, Iowa, Baylor for the longest time, a little bit of Wichita State too. Texas is one of those teams where they say they're back, but just they're not back. And with the change of how college basketball has been recently, where there's been back-to-back Big 12 champs in Baylor and Kansas, there could be a three-peat for the Big 12, and maybe Texas or Iowa State is one of those Big 12 teams that wins it this year. Texas has underperformed in years past, and even though they're on the highs of winning the Big 12 championship, I'm just going to pick the fun Cinderella run for Penn State a little bit and say that Penn State moves on to play Xavier in the Sweet 16. All right, Houston versus Indiana. I'm going to pick Houston again, just going with my gut. And then Xavier versus Penn State. Penn State, I think personally, could be the Loyola Chicago or St. Peter's Peacocks of this tournament, where they go on a run for a little bit and they become the college basketball darlings. Every run comes to an end, and so I'm going to have the Musketeers end up representing in the Midwest Championship game against Houston. And then for the championship game between Houston and Xavier, I think that's when Xavier's run comes to an end. Both teams were runners-up respectively in their individual conference tournament, but I think Houston has a lot to prove this year. And then especially a couple years back when they lost to Baylor in the Final Four, it's hard to try to bet against Houston. And so yes, I have Houston representing the Midwest in the Final Four. Thanks for watching the video as I ramble about college basketball. There could be a buzzer beater somewhere in this. Injuries play key factor too. We'll just have to watch. That's the fun of March Madness. So anyways, see you in the next video. Deuces.